Maria Gonzalez adjusted her worn cleaning supplies cart as she made her way through the marble corridors of the Grandview luxury retirement community. At 62, her back ached constantly, but she couldn't afford to miss a day of work. The divorce 3 years ago had left her with nothing but debt and the determination to survive on her own terms. Her supervisor, Derek Patterson, had made it clear that one more complaint about her work would result in immediate termination. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows as Maria knocked gently on the door of room 347. A frail voice called out, and she entered to find Mrs. Eleanor Blackwood sitting in her wheelchair, staring out at the garden. The elderly woman was 93, with silver hair that had once been magnificent and eyes that still held traces of the fierce intelligence that had defined her younger years. Most residents treated Maria as if she were invisible, but Mrs. Blackwood always greeted her with genuine warmth. "Good morning, dear," Eleanor said, her voice carrying the refined accent of old money. "How are you feeling today?" Maria smiled, one of the few genuine smiles she managed during her 12-hour shifts. "I'm doing well, Mrs. Blackwood. And you?" "Oh, you know how it is when you reach my age. Every day above ground is a blessing." Eleanor's eyes crinkled with humor. "Though I must say, the food here gets worse by the day. Yesterday they served something they claimed was beef, but I suspect it was cardboard seasoned with disappointment." Maria laughed softly as she began dusting the antique furniture that filled Eleanor's spacious suite. Unlike other residents who had sparse, institutional rooms, Eleanor's space was filled with beautiful pieces that spoke of a life well lived. Oil paintings lined the walls, and photographs in silver frames showed a younger Eleanor with various dignitaries and politicians. Maria had always assumed they were just formal portraits from social events. "Mrs. Blackwood, would you like me to help you to the dining room for breakfast?" Maria asked, noticing that Eleanor hadn't moved from her spot by the window. Eleanor waved dismissively. "I'm waiting for my son to call. He's supposed to discuss some business matter with me, though at my age I'm not sure why I still bother with such things." She paused, studying Maria's face. "You look tired, dear. Are you eating enough?" The question caught Maria off guard. In 3 years of working here, no one had ever asked about her well-being. "I'm fine, thank you for asking." "Nonsense, you're working too hard." Eleanor wheeled herself closer to Maria. "Tell me about your family. Do you have children?" Maria's hands stilled on the photograph she was dusting. "I have a daughter, Isabella. She's 25 and just finished her master's degree in social work. She's looking for a job, but it's difficult in this economy." "And your husband?" "Divorced," Maria said simply, not wanting to burden this kind woman with her troubles. Eleanor nodded understandingly. "Men can be such disappointments. I was lucky with my late husband, though he was gone too soon. left me to raise our son alone. She gestured to a photograph on the side table. That's my boy, though he's hardly a boy anymore at 71. Maria glanced at the photo, seeing a distinguished man in an expensive suit standing behind a podium. Something about his face seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it. He looks very successful. He is, though success can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes I wonder if he remembers where he came from. Aliner's voice carried a note of sadness. When you have power, it's easy to forget the people who don't. Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Derek Patterson entered without waiting for permission, his face flushed with irritation. He was a man in his 40s who had clawed his way up to his position as facilities manager through a combination of brown-nosing and petty tyranny. His expensive suit couldn't quite hide his insecurity, and he wielded his authority over the cleaning staff like a weapon. "Gonzalez," he snapped, "what are you doing chatting? You're behind schedule, and Mrs. Henderson in 312 is complaining that her bathroom wasn't properly cleaned yesterday." Maria felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, Mr. Patterson. I'll go take care of it right away." "See that you do. And in the future, remember that you're here to clean, not socialize." Derek's tone was deliberately loud and condescending, designed to humiliate Maria in front of Aliner. Aliner's eyes flashed with something dangerous. "Excuse me, young man, but I was having a conversation with Maria. She was being perfectly professional." Derek barely glanced at Aliner, dismissing her as just another elderly resident. "Ma'am, the cleaning staff has specific duties and schedules to maintain. I'm sure you understand." "I understand perfectly," Aliner said, her voice taking on a tone that would have warned anyone who truly knew her. "I understand that you're being unnecessarily rude to someone who works very hard." Derek's face reddened. "With all due respect, ma'am, the management of staff is not the concern of residents. Maria, get back to work. Now." Maria gathered her supplies quickly, shooting an apologetic look at Aliner. "I'll see you tomorrow, Mrs. Blackwood." As Maria left the room, she heard Derek's voice behind her. "And in the future, Mrs. Blackwood, I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't interfere with my staff's duties. They have work to do." Aliner's response was too quiet for Maria to hear, but Derek's footsteps followed quickly behind her into the hallway. His face was even redder than before, and he grabbed Maria's arm roughly. "Let me make something clear, Gonzalez. You're on thin ice here. One more complaint, one more instance of you wasting time chatting with residents, and you're gone. Do you understand me?" Maria nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Derek's grip tightened painfully on her arm. "I asked if you understand me." "Yes, sir, I understand." Derek released her arm and straightened his tie. "Good. Now get to work. and stay away from 347. Mrs. Blackwood doesn't need any more distractions. Maria spent the rest of the morning cleaning Mrs. Henderson's already spotless bathroom, scrubbing until her knuckles were raw. Mrs. Henderson, a bitter woman in her 80s, stood over her the entire time, pointing out imaginary spots and complaining about the quality of service at Grandview. Maria bit her tongue and continued working, needing this job too desperately to risk any further confrontation. During her lunch break, Maria sat in the small staff room, eating a peanut butter sandwich she'd brought from home. Her phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. "Mom, I have a job interview next week. Fingers crossed. Love you." Maria smiled for the first time since the morning's humiliation. Isabella had worked so hard to get her degree, taking out loans and working part-time jobs throughout school. She deserved every opportunity that came her way. Maria typed back, "So proud of you, Mija. You're going to do great." The afternoon brought more of the same treatment from Derek. He seemed to be watching Maria's every move, appearing whenever she paused for a moment or exchanged pleasantries with a resident. By 5 o'clock, Maria's nerves were frayed, and her back was screaming from the constant bending and lifting. As she prepared to leave for the day, Maria made a decision that would change everything. Despite Derek's warning, she couldn't bring herself to ignore Mrs. Blackwood completely. The elderly woman had shown her more kindness in one morning than Maria had received from anyone else at Grandview in 3 years. She quietly made her way to room 347 and knocked softly. "Come in, dear," Eleanor's voice called out. Maria found Eleanor in the same position by the window, but now there were tears on her cheeks. The sight broke Maria's heart. "Mrs. Blackwood, are you all right?" Eleanor wiped her eyes quickly. "Oh, Maria, I didn't expect to see you again today. I thought that awful man had forbidden you from coming here." "He did, but I couldn't leave without checking on you. You seemed upset." Eleanor's composure cracked slightly. "I spoke with my son today. I told him about what happened this morning, about how that manager treated you. Do you know what he said?" Maria shook her head, though she had a sinking feeling she could guess. "He said I was being overly sensitive, that managers have to maintain discipline with their staff. He suggested I was losing my mental faculties." Eleanor's voice broke slightly. "My own son thinks I'm becoming a senile old woman who imagines slights where none exist." Maria knelt beside Eleanor's wheelchair, taking the older woman's hands in hers. "Mrs. Blackwood, you are one of the sharpest, kindest people I've ever met. Don't let anyone, not even your son, make you doubt that." Eleanor squeezed Maria's hands. "You're taking a risk coming here. I don't want you to lose your job because of me." "Some things are more important than jobs," Maria said, though her stomach churned at the thought of being unemployed. "You've been nothing but kind to me, And I won't abandon you just because some petty tyrant thinks he can control who I care about." Elinor studied Maria's face for a long moment. "You know, dear, I haven't always been just a resident in a retirement home. In my younger days, I had some influence in this city. Perhaps it's time I remembered how to use it." Maria didn't understand the full meaning behind Elinor's words, but she saw something shift in the older woman's expression. The sadness was still there, but it was joined by something else, a steely determination that reminded Maria of Isabella when she set her mind to something. "Mrs. Blackwood, please don't do anything that might make things worse for you here. I can handle Derek Patterson." Elinor smiled, and for a moment Maria glimpsed the formidable woman she must have been in her prime. "Oh, my dear Maria, you have no idea what I'm capable of handling." The next morning brought unexpected changes to Grandview Luxury Retirement Community. Maria arrived for her shift to find the entire staff buzzing with nervous energy. Apparently, there was going to be an unscheduled inspection by the corporate office, and Derek Patterson was running around like a man possessed, barking orders and making everyone's life miserable. "Gonzalez," Derek's voice cut through the morning chatter as Maria clocked in. "I want every room spotless today. Corporate is sending someone to evaluate our facility, and I won't have any complaints about cleanliness." Maria nodded and gathered her supplies, wondering what had prompted this sudden corporate interest. Grandview was part of a larger chain of luxury retirement communities, and corporate inspections usually happened annually with plenty of advance notice. This felt different, more urgent somehow. As she began her rounds, Maria couldn't help but notice the increased activity throughout the building. Maintenance workers were touching up paint in the hallways. The kitchen staff was preparing elaborate meals instead of their usual institutional fare. And even the landscaping crew was working overtime to make the grounds look perfect. When Maria reached room 347, she hesitated. Derek's warning from the previous day still echoed in her mind, but her conscience wouldn't let her ignore Mrs. Blackwood. She knocked gently and entered to find Elinor dressed more formally than usual, wearing a navy blue dress with pearl earrings and a matching necklace. "Good morning, dear," Elinor said, her voice carrying a note of satisfaction. "You look worried. Is everything all right?" "There's some kind of corporate inspection happening today. Derek is making everyone crazy trying to get everything perfect." Maria began her cleaning routine, working efficiently while keeping an eye on the door. "You look lovely today, Mrs. Blackwood. Are you expecting visitors?" Elinor's smile was mysterious. "You could say that. Maria, I want you to know that I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, about fairness and treating people with dignity." Before Maria could respond, Derek's voice boomed down the hallway. "Where is everyone? I want all staff in the main conference room immediately." Maria's heart sank. She was going to be in trouble again for being in Alina's room. "I have to go, Mrs. Blackwood. Derek is calling for all staff." "Of course, dear. Don't worry about me. I have a feeling today is going to be very interesting." Maria hurried to the conference room, where she found all the cleaning staff, kitchen workers, maintenance crew, and administrative personnel gathered. Derek stood at the front, his face flushed and his hands shaking slightly as he shuffled through a stack of papers. "Listen up, everyone," Derek began, his voice higher than usual. "We're having an important visitor today from corporate headquarters. I want everyone on their best behavior. No chatting with residents, no wasting time, and absolutely no complaints or problems of any kind. Do I make myself clear?" The staff murmured their agreement, but Maria noticed that Derek's eyes kept darting toward the door as if he was expecting someone. His usual arrogance seemed replaced by genuine nervousness. "Gonzalez," Derek singled her out, "I especially want you to keep a low profile today. Stay focused on your work and avoid any unnecessary interactions with residents." Maria felt her cheeks burn as the other staff members turned to look at her. Derek's public humiliation tactics were nothing new, but they never got easier to endure. She nodded silently, not trusting herself to speak. The meeting disbanded, and everyone returned to their duties with renewed intensity. Maria threw herself into her work, cleaning with a thoroughness that went beyond even her usual high standards. She wanted to give Derek no excuse to find fault with her performance. Around 10 o'clock, a buzz of excitement rippled through the facility. Word spread quickly among the staff that the corporate visitor had arrived, and it was someone very important, not just a regional manager, but someone from the very top of the company hierarchy. Maria was cleaning the windows in the main lobby when she saw a convoy of black cars pull up to the entrance. She watched as several people in expensive suits got out, led by a tall man with silver hair and a commanding presence. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't place where she might have seen him before. Derek practically ran to greet the visitors, his obsequious smile making Maria cringe with second-hand embarrassment. She could see him gesturing wildly as he gave what appeared to be an impromptu tour of the lobby, pointing out the expensive artwork and marble floors as if he had personally designed them. Quite a production, isn't it? Maria turned to find Mrs. Blackwood in her wheelchair beside her, watching the scene in the lobby with obvious amusement. "Mrs. Blackwood, you shouldn't be down here," Derek specifically said. "Derek Patterson has said many things," Alina interrupted, her voice carrying a steel that Maria had never heard before. "Very few of them worth listening to." As they watched, the important visitor seemed to grow impatient with Derek's tour. He said something sharp that made Derek's face go pale, then gestured toward the elevator. The entire group moved toward the residential floors, with Derek trailing behind like a scolded puppy. I have a feeling Mr. Patterson is about to have a very educational day, Alina said with satisfaction. Maria looked at the elderly woman with growing suspicion. Mrs. Blackwood, do you know something about this inspection? Alina's smile was enigmatic. Let's just say that sometimes the universe has a way of correcting injustices, especially when the right person learns about them. Before Maria could ask what she meant, her radio crackled to life. All cleaning staff to the residential floors immediately. I repeat, all cleaning staff to the residential floors. Maria sighed and gathered her supplies. I have to go. Please be careful, Mrs. Blackwood. Derek is already looking for reasons to be angry with me. Don't worry about Derek Patterson, Alina said, with a confidence that made Maria wonder if the elderly woman knew something she wasn't sharing. I have a feeling his attitude is about to change dramatically. Maria made her way to the third floor, where she found Derek in a state of barely controlled panic. He was directing staff members with frantic gestures, his earlier arrogance replaced by obvious fear. The corporate visitors were systematically going through each floor, and Derek seemed to grow more agitated with each room they inspected. Gonzalez, Derek hissed as she approached. Clean Mrs. Patterson's room immediately. Make sure it's perfect. These people are looking for any excuse to find fault. Maria nodded and headed to the designated room, but as she passed room 347, she heard voices inside. Through the partially open door, she could see Alina sitting in her wheelchair, facing the important visitor she had seen earlier. Derek stood nearby, his face a mask of confusion and growing horror. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Blackwood," the visitor was saying, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I had no idea you were experiencing these problems. If I had known about Mr. Patterson's behavior, I would have addressed it immediately." Alina's voice was calm but firm. "I understand, dear. I know you have many responsibilities, but I wanted you to see firsthand how certain members of your staff treat the people who work so hard to maintain this facility." Maria froze in the hallway, pieces of a puzzle suddenly clicking into place. The familiar face, the formal photographs in Alina's room, the way she spoke about her son with such mixture of love and disappointment. She looked more closely at the visitor and felt her breath catch in her throat. She recognized him now, not from personal experience, but from newspapers and television news. The man talking to Alina was Michael Blackwood, the billionaire CEO of Blackwood Industries, one of the largest companies in the state. Blackwood Industries owned the chain of retirement communities that included Grandview, along with dozens of other businesses throughout the region. Eleanor Blackwood wasn't just a resident at Grandview. She was the mother of the man who owned the entire company. Derek seemed to be coming to the same realization, his face cycling through expressions of confusion, recognition, and absolute terror. He stood frozen in the doorway, apparently unable to process what he was seeing and hearing. "Mother," Michael Blackwood was saying, "I want you to tell me exactly what happened. Don't leave out any details." Eleanor's voice carried clearly into the hallway. "Yesterday morning, I was having a pleasant conversation with one of your cleaning staff, a lovely woman named Maria Gonzalez. She's been nothing but professional and kind to me for the 3 years she's worked here. Your facility manager, Mr. Patterson, burst into my room and spoke to both of us in the most condescending, rude manner imaginable." Maria felt her heart racing. She wanted to leave, to avoid being drawn into whatever was happening, but she also couldn't tear herself away from the conversation. He grabbed Maria's arm roughly, Eleanor continued, spoke to her like she was a disobedient child, and then had the audacity to tell me that I shouldn't interfere with his management of the staff. When I attempted to defend Maria, he dismissed me as if I were a senile old woman whose opinions didn't matter. Michael Blackwood's voice was deadly quiet. He put his hands on an employee. "Yes, and not gently. I saw the marks on her arm afterward." Derek made a small sound of distress in the doorway. His face had gone completely white, and Maria could see sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "Furthermore," Eleanor went on, "I have observed Mr. Patterson's treatment of the cleaning staff for months. He seems to take particular pleasure in humiliating them, especially Maria, who works harder than anyone else in this facility. Yesterday, he made it clear that she would be fired if there were any more complaints about her work, though I've never seen her do anything but excellent work." Michael Blackwood stood up from his chair, his tall frame radiating barely controlled anger. "Mr. Patterson, I think you need to join this conversation." Derek stumbled into the room, his usual swagger completely gone. "Mr. Blackwood, sir, I can explain." "Please do," Michael said, his voice cutting through Derek's stammering. "Explain to me how you justify treating any employee, let alone my mother, with such disrespect." Derek's mouth opened and closed several times before any words came out. "Sir, there must be some misunderstanding. I would never. I was just trying to maintain discipline and—" "By physically grabbing an employee." "That's not. I barely touched." "So you admit you put your hands on Maria Gonzalez?" Derek realized he had trapped himself. "It wasn't like that, sir. It was barely a touch, just to get her attention and dismissing my mother's concerns as interference." Derek looked desperately around the room as if searching for an escape route. "Mr. Blackwood, your mother, Mrs. Blackwood. I didn't realize. I mean, she never said." "She never said what?" "That she was my mother. That she deserved basic respect. That the employees here are human beings who shouldn't be treated like garbage." Maria pressed herself against the wall in the hallway, trying to make herself invisible. She had never seen Derek so completely deflated, stripped of all his petty authority, and exposed as the small, cruel man he really was. "I want Maria Gonzalez brought here immediately," Michael Blackwood said. "I want to hear her side of this story, and I want to see these arm marks my mother mentioned." Derek nodded frantically and stepped into the hallway, nearly colliding with Maria. His eyes were wild with panic, and when he spoke, his voice was a desperate whisper. "Gonzalez, please, you have to help me here. Tell them it was all a misunderstanding. Tell them I barely touched you, that it was nothing serious." Maria looked at this man who had made her life miserable for months, who had threatened her job and humiliated her in front of residents and coworkers alike. She thought about Isabella's job interview, about the bills piling up at home, about all the times she had bitten her tongue and endured Derek's abuse because she needed this job. "Maria," Derek continued, his voice breaking slightly, "I'll make sure you get a raise. I'll put in a good word for you with corporate. Just please don't make this worse than it already is." Maria looked past Derek to where Eleanor sat in her wheelchair, watching the proceedings with the quiet dignity of someone who had finally decided to use her power for justice rather than personal gain. She thought about the kindness Eleanor had shown her, the genuine concern for her well-being, the way the elderly woman had listened to her stories about Isabella with real interest. "Mr. Patterson," Maria said quietly, "I think Mr. Blackwood wants to see me." Derek's face crumpled as he realized that his years of petty tyranny were about to come to an end. Maria entered room 347, with her heart pounding so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. Michael Blackwood turned to face her, and she was struck by how much he resembled his mother around the eyes. The same intelligence, the same ability to see through pretense to the truth beneath. "Maria," Eleanor said warmly, "please come in. I'd like you to meet my son Michael." Michael Blackwood stepped forward and extended his hand. "Ms. Gonzalez, I'm very sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. My mother has been telling me about the treatment you've received from Mr. Patterson." Maria shook his hand, acutely aware of her worn cleaning uniform and the disparity between her appearance and his expensive suit. "Mr. Blackwood, I don't want to cause any trouble. I just do my job and—" "You're not causing trouble," Michael interrupted gently. "According to my mother, you've been the victim of workplace harassment and possibly assault. That's something I take very seriously." Derek stood in the corner, looking like he wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. Several other corporate executives had gathered in the room, all of them taking notes and looking grimly professional. Eleanor wheeled her chair closer to Maria. "Dear, would you mind showing my son your arm? The one Mr. Patterson grabbed yesterday." Maria hesitated. She had hoped the bruises would fade quickly, but Derek's grip had been strong enough to leave distinct finger marks on her upper arm. Reluctantly, she pushed up her sleeve, revealing the dark purple bruises that clearly showed where Derek's fingers had dug into her flesh. The silence in the room was deafening. Michael Blackwood's face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, and finally, a cold fury that made even Maria take a step back. "Mr. Patterson," Michael said without taking his eyes off Maria's arm, "are those your fingerprints on my employee's arm?" Derek's voice was barely a whisper. "Sir, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. But first, Ms. Gonzalez, I want you to tell me exactly what happened yesterday. Everything. Don't leave out any details and don't worry about protecting anyone's feelings." Maria glanced at Derek, who was staring at her with desperate pleading in his eyes. For a moment, she felt almost sorry for him. Then she remembered all the times he had humiliated her, all the threats about her job, all the ways he had made her life miserable simply because he could. "Yesterday morning, I was talking with Mrs. Blackwood while I cleaned her room," Maria began, her voice growing stronger as she continued. "We were just having a normal conversation. She asked about my daughter, and I told her Isabella was looking for work after finishing her master's degree. Mrs. Blackwood was being kind, asking about my family." She paused, glancing at Eleanor, who nodded encouragingly. Then Mr. Patterson came in without knocking. He was angry that I was talking instead of just cleaning. He started yelling at me in front of Mrs. Blackwood, saying I was behind schedule and that I was here to clean, not socialize. Michael's jaw tightened. "Go on." Mrs. Blackwood tried to defend me, saying I was being professional and that we were just having a conversation. But Mr. Patterson dismissed her, said that management of staff wasn't the concern of residents. He said that to my mother. Michael's voice was dangerously quiet. "Yes, sir. Then he ordered me to leave, and when I was gathering my supplies, he followed me into the hallway. He grabbed my arm very hard and told me I was on thin ice. He said one more complaint would get me fired, and that I wasn't allowed to talk to residents anymore." Maria pulled her sleeve back down, suddenly self-conscious about the bruises. "He specifically told me to stay away from room 347, that Mrs. Blackwood didn't need any more distractions." One of the corporate executives stepped forward. "Ms. Gonzalez, how long have you worked at this facility?" 3 years, sir." "And in that time, Have you ever received any formal complaints about your work? Maria shook her head. No, sir. I've always tried to do my best. Eleanor spoke up. Michael, I want you to know that Maria is the most dedicated, hardworking employee in this entire facility. She goes above and beyond every single day. The residents love her because she treats them like human beings, not just tasks to be completed. Derek finally found his voice. Mr. Blackwood, please, you have to understand the pressures of managing a facility like this. Sometimes discipline is necessary to maintain standards. Discipline, Michael whirled on Derek. Is that what you call physically assaulting an employee? Is that what you call disrespecting my mother? Sir, I never meant any disrespect. I didn't know Mrs. Blackwood was your mother. And that matters how exactly. Michael's voice rose slightly. Are you saying that if she weren't my mother, it would be acceptable to dismiss her concerns and treat her rudely? Derek realized he had walked into another trap. No, sir, that's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Mr. Patterson? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been running this facility like your personal kingdom, treating employees like servants and residents like inconveniences. One of the other executives cleared his throat. Mr. Blackwood, if I may, we should probably discuss this privately with Mr. Patterson. Michael nodded curtly. You're right. Mr. Patterson, you'll be coming with us for a very long conversation. Ms. Gonzalez, I want you to know that this behavior is completely unacceptable and will not be tolerated in any of our facilities. Maria felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it was quickly followed by anxiety. Mr. Blackwood, I hope this won't affect my job. I really need this position. Michael's expression softened. Ms. Gonzalez, your job is secure. In fact, I'd like to discuss some changes that I think will benefit both you and our residents. But first, I need to deal with this situation. He turned to Derek, who looked like he was about to be sick. Mr. Patterson, you're suspended immediately pending a full investigation. Security will escort you from the premises, and HR will be in contact regarding the next steps. Derek's face went through a series of expressions: shock, denial, and finally, a desperate anger. This is insane. I've been running this place successfully for 5 years. One little incident and you're going to destroy my career. One little incident. Eleanor's voice cut through Derek's protests like a blade. Young man, you've been abusing your authority for months, if not years. The only reason it's coming to light now is because you finally picked on the wrong person. Derek turned to Maria with a snarl. This is all your fault, you know that. If you had just kept your mouth shut and done your job. That's enough. Michael's voice boomed through the room. Security. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway as if they had been waiting for this moment. Michael gestured toward Derek. "Please escort Mr. Patterson from the building. He's no longer employed here." As Derek was led away, still protesting his innocence, Maria felt her legs go weak. She sank into a nearby chair, the full impact of what had just happened finally hitting her. Eleanor wheeled her chair over to Maria and took her hand. "Are you all right, dear?" Maria looked at this remarkable woman who had just turned her life upside down with a simple phone call to her son. "Mrs. Blackwood, I don't know how to thank you, but I also don't understand. Why didn't you tell me who you were?" Eleanor smiled sadly. "Because, my dear, I wanted people to like me for who I am, not for who my son is. When you have money and power, it's hard to know who your real friends are. But you were kind to me when you thought I was just another elderly resident. That meant more to me than you'll ever know." Michael approached them, his expression much gentler than it had been moments before. "Ms. Gonzalez, I owe you an apology. This should never have happened in any of our facilities. I want to make sure you're properly compensated for what you've endured." Maria shook her head. "Mr. Blackwood, I don't need compensation. I just want to keep my job and be treated with respect." "You'll have both," Michael assured her. "But I also want to offer you something else. My mother tells me you have a daughter who recently finished her master's degree in social work." Maria nodded, wondering where this was going. "We're expanding our employee assistance programs across all our facilities. We need someone to coordinate services for our staff, things like counseling, financial planning, career development. It would be a significant step up from your current position, with a substantial salary increase and full benefits." Maria stared at him in disbelief. "Are you offering my daughter a job?" "I'm offering her an opportunity to interview for a position that I think would be perfect for someone with her background and qualifications. Of course, she'd have to earn the job on her own merits, but I have a feeling that anyone raised by someone like you would be exactly the kind of person we need." Tears began to flow down Maria's cheeks. After years of struggle, of being treated like she was invisible, of worrying constantly about making ends meet, she could hardly believe what she was hearing. Eleanor squeezed her hand. "There's more, dear. Tell her about the other changes, Michael." Michael smiled, and Maria could see Eleanor's warmth reflected in her son's expression. "We're also restructuring the management of this facility. We need someone who understands what it takes to really care for our residents, someone who knows how to treat employees with respect and dignity. I'd like to offer you the position of Assistant Director of Resident Services." Maria's mouth fell open. "But I'm just a cleaning lady. I don't have any management experience." "You have something more valuable than experience," Michael said. "You have integrity, compassion, and the respect of both residents and staff. Those are qualities that can't be taught." Alina nodded approvingly. Besides, dear, you've been managing Derek Patterson's incompetence for 3 years. Managing competent people will be much easier. Despite everything that had happened, Maria found herself laughing through her tears. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Alina urged. Say yes to the promotion. Say yes to letting Isabella interview for that position. And say yes to finally being treated the way you deserve to be treated. Maria looked around the room at the faces watching her expectantly. Just this morning, she had been a powerless cleaning lady, invisible and voiceless, subject to the whims of a petty tyrant. Now she was being offered opportunities she had never dared to dream of. Yes, she said softly, then with more strength, yes to all of it. Michael Blackwood smiled broadly. Excellent. Welcome to your new life, Ms. Gonzalez. Part 4. 3 months later, Maria stood in her new office on the second floor of Grandview, looking out at the garden where she had seen Alina sitting by her window that first morning. The transformation in her life still felt surreal sometimes. The professional clothes hanging in her closet, the nameplate on her door reading, Maria Gonzalez, Assistant Director of Resident Services, and most importantly, the respect she now commanded from both staff and residents. Isabella had not only gotten the job coordinating employee assistance programs, but had excelled beyond everyone's expectations. She had already implemented 3 new programs across the Blackwood Industries retirement facilities, including a scholarship fund for employees' children and a mental health support network that was being adopted company-wide. Mrs. Gonzalez, the voice belonged to Jennifer Walsh, one of the newer cleaning staff members. Maria had insisted that everyone call her by her first name, but some of the employees still struggled with the change in her status. Please, Jennifer, just Maria. What can I do for you? Jennifer hesitated in the doorway. It's about Mrs. Patterson in room 243. She's been difficult lately, making unreasonable demands.